lot of hate against foreigner drivers.
Why is
Because you want me to use questions? They're just a dumb truck driver.
Hey, but you got to remember, I'm in the industry. You're not.
the ugly mindset starts at the school? Oh, it's okay, just go, you're fine.
Well, see, the biggest thing is, and I can tell you because I'm in the government meetings
Mm-hmm.
over the truck training schools
Mm-hmm.
right now, is that there is no. We have to get bad of the bad apples, and I tell them that a lot of times these bad truck training schools are associated with bad carriers.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They don't care about anything. The new driver will come in, they hand them the keys.
Mm-hmm.
I said, normally these trucking companies have a relationship with the school or part owners of the school or their cousin owns a school
Yeah,
and they just take them in and they sign off on stuff that people haven't
it's
done.
almost a mafia. I agree on
Right.
this.
It's and you're seeing it. There's more and more organized crime coming in. You look at it as HGI or HCI up there in Hamilton, I think it is. Somebody came in and shot bullets all through the front of their building. Like, it's the third time they've been hit, right? So it's just like, well, we need to step back. We need to take a better look and
Mm-hmm.
right and deal with that. And the fact that truck training schools are partially mandated under MCU
Mm-hmm.
and the other part under MTO.
Yeah,
It needs to be one house,
yeah, I agree.
right? So we've been pushing for that. That it needs to come back into
I agree.
MTO's
There's a lot of work
control.
that needs to be done. Welcome to the Truck Stop Show. Today we're joined by Shelly. My name is Ali. Shelly has been in trucking industry for more than 30 years, and she is also the CEO and founder of Women's Trucking Associate Federation of Canada. Let's talk to Shelly. Shelly, how are you?
I'm doing good, Allie. How are you today?
I'm fine, thanks. Thank you for being here. So, Shelly, tell us about your journey in trucking.
Well, my journey in trucking started. I'm the daughter of a truck driver. That's kind of how I got the bug. And then eventually I started with driving school buses, motor coach, straight truck, and then on to the big truck.
So, you've been doing this for 30 years. Are you satisfied with what you do?
I love what I do. That's why I'm still doing it.
Right. Shelly, what kind of trucking have you done so far?
I've been all over Canada and the US. So dry vans, reefers, um, sea containers,
So pretty much,
just
I don't want to say
those.
everything because trucking is too big,
Yeah, trucking's
but
too big, but
yeah,
more of that line of freight. So
yeah. So I never actually had any female truck driver on my show. So I'm really curious to know that how does it feel to be a female person and be a truck driver?
I don't look at it any differently than a guy being a driver, honestly. Um, I'm vertically challenged height wise, so I've had to learn to do things a little differently or add extra tools to do the job that I do. But no, a guy can do it, I can do it.
Well, you know what? I salute you because this is a very man dominating industry and it is blue collar. And then there's not, I know only 2 or 3% of women make of this industry in trucking in Canada. And these numbers are not very good, let's put it this way. And and you are one of those 2 or 3% that are part of this such a challenging job. It is a very challenging job. We all agree on this. I know people who don't do trucking think it's just the easiest thing you can do. It's not. And then I salute you for what you have done, and I'm very grateful to have you on my show.
Oh, thank you. I think the problem is that we don't talk about it enough, and we need to get more of the women to be vocal about what they do, so that we introduce this industry to other women. I've had the greatest support. All my mentors have been men in this industry. So we need to look at the guys with a little bit of different light.
Yeah, these are some personal questions here. So you are raised by a truck driver.
Yes.
How many siblings do you have?
One.
One other sibling?
Yes.
He or she?
My brother.
Your brother. Is he involved in trucking too?
No.
He's not. But
No.
you are.
I am.
So
My
see,
dad would tell you he was shocked by that.
so that makes it more interesting. You know that, right? So being raised by a truck driver can be very hard.
it's difficult, and it's different. Um, I never really saw it until I was, driving a truck and I was a mother and what my dad went through and, not being home. My mother had this rule. He could miss any holiday, he could miss any occasion, but Lord help him if he wasn't home Christmas Eve.
That's his promised day to be home.
Yes. He had to be home Christmas Eve, and I can still remember there was a time it was just severe blizzards. The weather was awful, and my dad still wasn't home, and it hit 6 o'clock, and then 8 o'clock, and then 9 o'clock, and my mother was like, "Okay, you kids need to go to bed," and she put us to bed, and of course, we were upstairs awake, and we could hear, like, my mom was mad, right? There was no doubt about it, and it was probably, like, 2 minutes to midnight. We lived out in the country, and I said to my brother, I'm like, "Oh my god, dad's home." And we were all excited, and we come downstairs, and my mom goes, "What are you doing?" And we go, "Dad's home." And she's like, "No, he's not." And we're like, "Yeah, we can hear the truck coming down the road. We heard it," right? Like, when you were the kid of a truck driver, you know the sound of your dad's truck anywhere.
Wow.
You know the sight of your dad's truck anywhere, right? And
You can
sure enough,
recognize the
and
sound.
when he walked through the door, he said to my mom, he goes, "Midnight, made it." So it was
Yeah.
great. It
Yeah.
was great.
Yeah. So you have been raised by a truck driver and you have raised kids yourself. How many kids you had?
3.
3. Do they complain about what you do now? Are they all big now, adults?
2 of my sons have passed away. So they never complained because I didn't start driving truck more full time till they were in high school. So, and that's the reason I got started in driving a school bus is just because I could take them with me.
Hmm.
And then the coaches and stuff. So, and now I've got 2 grandkids, and so yeah,
I can't
life
even
is good.
imagine being a truck driver and raising kids. I can't process that in my head. Like as a mother, as a father, like typically speaking, I mean, man, like fathers just like they're like, oh, I gotta do the job, I go to the job and whatnot. But as a female person, you have the kids. Were you like doing long hauls and stuff?
Yes,
Like,
I've always been long haul. Don't call me city bitch.
yeah. So you never done city work at all?
Nope.
Right. And is it because you like the road? Like, what's the passion here?
Oh, I prefer being out on the highway. I like meeting new people all the time, and I hate Toronto. There's no way you could get me to, it's bad enough when I got to go in and out of that city. Um, but in the truck, do I go there in my car? I do now because I have meetings to go to, but before, no. That's in my big bullseye do not go to area.
Hmm. Yeah. So I was talking about how can you be sort of talk about this to me, please. That you're the long haul truck driver and you have kids, and like how do you manage that? It's just a lot as a mother because kids tend to be more focused towards mother, right?
They
At least,
tend to
at least,
be,
at least I think that way.
but I think, like it comes from having good support. So if you've got to support a family, like my mom was a godsend, right? My brother and his wife were around a lot as well. So, it's that support network that you need. And, the reality is when your kids hit that 13 and 14, they don't want anything to do with you, right? Like you're lucky if they want to sit and eat at the same table with you when it's dinner time because they're about their friends and extracurricular activities and stuff. So, the younger years are like to me were more important and I was home for my kids. Um, and now you have, the opportunity of local work and regional work. So it's making it more and more easier for women to get into the sector. And you face it like all the different avenues from everything from, you can waste management and, ready mix and all those different industries that you can get into now. Um, it's more opportunities for women in this area.
Shelly, tell me when you first decided to get your truck license. What was that thought process? What was that planning?
Well, I can tell you that there wasn't a lot of planning in it. I finally, with driving the school bus, they started to change a lot of stuff. And then all of a sudden the rules changed where, like, if 2 kids were fighting on my bus, I was no longer able to pull them apart and separate them. And I had this student on my bus, he was a bully. right? And he'd grabbed a young kid and he was hammering him, and I was just like, I can't watch this. And I pulled them apart. And I got reprimanded. Uh, cool, whatever. Do what you got to do. I'm going home and I'm going to sleep with a good conscience because I saved that little kid from getting beat. And I can remember going to a meeting at the school with the principal and school board and all that kind of stuff. And I come home and I said to my husband, I said, you know what? I'm sick of people. I'm done. And then I applied at a company in Cambridge with my BZAD license. And I started driving a straight truck there. And then I got on the job training there and got my A license.
Hmm.
And I haven't looked back.
Well, that's good. So yeah, so basically you almost got pushed, let's say, because you didn't want to drive the bus anymore because of the
Yep. Yep.
circumstances, right? Yeah.
But it was always something that I wanted to do. And I used to do a lot of like charter work in coaches and, driving all over. And I've just always had that natural bug for it. And I love to meet new people and see new things. So
Hmm.
it was just a fit.
Hmm. Shelly, now I want to talk about your federation, which is the Women's Trucking Federation of Canada.
Yes.
So you are the founding member of this, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and then you are the CEO. So, and you guys are based
We're based in Ontario.
in Ontario. And tell me what you guys do and where did the idea come from uh, being part of this organization?
Well, it all came because there's very few women in trucking at that point. And, the opportunity to be able to network and meet each other and talk about struggles and passions and, career and life, there isn't an awful lot of that. And um, also I felt, I wasn't seeing enough movement in, you know, public safety, talking about trucking to the general public, going into our school systems, not only to teach the kids safety around commercial vehicles, but also telling them about what we do, right? And I think the younger kids are, the more that we can give them the bug into trucking,
Right.
right? So, we got to get in and start talking to those kids in grade 5 and 6 and even younger. I can remember think it was grade 2 I was in. It was show and tell at school. You know what I brought to school for show and tell?
Hmm.
My dad in his truck,
Really?
right? And the kids loved it. But we don't see that anymore, right? There's less and less of that. And we don't see companies involved as much as going into the school system and taking a truck there and getting the kids up in it. So it was all of these things that kind of got me motivated, and the fact that I wanted to see some change. I was tired of seeing my brothers and sisters of the highway getting killed needlessly in accidents that didn't need to happen.
So you are the person that came up with this idea?
Yes, there was 3 of us.
Okay. And then I just want to know the thought process here. So let's say you're sitting one day and be like, hey, let's open up an organization.
Well, we did some conversations, and then it was like, okay, maybe we need to start an organization and do something officially. And it was hard because, like, when you're on the road still working. So when I first started this, like, do my 70 plus hours in the truck and then add on the WTFC stuff. So, you're looking at another 30 hours a week. So it was really long weeks. It was a lot of learning curves. It was a lot of time off work attending, different events and conferences and meetings, um, to, as one of my board members says, fill my cupboard. And so yeah, it's been great learning and growing through that, and I'm still learning. So
So what's, if I were to ask you, what is, like, just in one line, tell me, what do you guys do at Women's, Women's Trucking Federation of Canada? In one line, what do you guys do? Like, if I ask you, hey, what you do?
one line of what we do. Well, we have a slogan: in the office, under the hood, or behind the wheel, we're all pieces of the puzzle.
So basically, you represent, is that a word?
I say, represent. We do a lot of driver polls. Um, it's about networking, it's about mentoring, it's about growing. It's about change.
Do you have membership, like open membership, like anybody
Yes,
can?
we do have open membership. So we have a lot of corporate members as well as individual members. We probably have a following of over 40,000 between all our social media channels. So it's important. And we get a lot of comments, about they love our social media posting. The fact that, we have this thing where we post something positive every single day.
And is the organization self-fund? Like you guys fund it yourself, or you get some government
It
assistance?
was self-funded. So back in 2023, I think it was, we got some government funding and we put 54 people through truck training school. But basically, all of our funding is like through membership,
Right.
right? And all of my board it's all we all volunteer, including myself. Nobody gets a paycheck.
Really? At
Yes.
all? Like you never made any money out of the organization?
No paychecks. We all volunteer our time.
Like I have a very, I don't know how you're gonna take this, but I have a very negative image about many organizations, just not around trucking. And that's my personal research. There's a whole bunch of organizations that would go out and make some money and like never do a thing other than just talk and talk, just be like we are very important, right? But like if you tell me that you run this organization, this is very focused on female person in trucking, and then you say you never get a paycheck, I mean that's big to me.
Well, I can tell you, like and nothing against anybody getting a paycheck that they deserve, right? Um, but we see some organizations out there in the world, and I'm not talking just trucking, but those CEOs get six-figure salaries. Um, and I'm like, okay, so like what are you actually doing for that six-figure salary? Right. And I have an issue with that, and it's the same as when you get into some of these charities. And I think about it when I go to, when somebody's asking me for money for something, my big thing is going in and having a look and, well, how much is it going to administrative cost and how much is actually going to the charity or the researcher there or the intended person?
Like that, I've shared the exact same feeling. But the point is, like, within trucking, I mean, especially where we don't have too many female persons in trucking. I actually had been struggling to bring a female person on my show. I had been phoning around trying to reach out to people that I really wanted female person to come on the show as a truck driver, but there's not many out there
Oh,
to
there are. Now that you've met me, I can introduce you to a whole whack of
Oh,
them.
please do, because I really want to. Because look, there's a lot of people that don't know about trucking. That's the whole purpose of this show. That how crazy it can get. Like your weeks are basically beyond your control. Like once you leave, you have no sense what's happening, right? Like it's a very unpredictable. You can't really plan a lot of stuff. So like of course, as you said, if you have a great support system, it is for you. If you don't have support system, you're gonna go nuts. You're gonna go crazy.
Well, that's just it, and support is a two-way street, and I think, men need support when they're out on the road just as much as women do. It's very lonely, and I think, we don't often think about the mental health aspect for drivers, and that's regardless of what gender you are. It
I
doesn't
agree.
matter.
Yeah.
I mean, you have that fight with your spouse or partner, but you've got to go. You've got to get in. You're
hmm
dispatched out.
hmm
I mean, that stuff plays on your mind, and when you're driving for 10, 11, 13 hours down the road, you've got nothing to do but think,
Correct.
right? So I think, that's a big piece of what people miss in our industry. Um, I'm sad to say that, like we've had drivers that have committed suicide out on the road,
You know
right?
that? Yeah.
Um, and that's why. So what are we doing for them? It's so much about the hot body in the seat and the mentality that people think, oh, all they do is drive. All you do is sit on your ass and drive.
This topic is so close to my heart. One, I think trucking is probably the most unappreciated work.
It is.
And like not just unappreciated, it's actually looked upon as a negative thing. I was just talking to somebody on the phone the other day, and he said he's a truck driver. He said when I disclosed to my family that I'm going into trucking, he said my mother-in-law came up to me and she said, "You can't do that because I've seen people go very bad when they get into trucking." He's like, "No, it's not like that." I had to explain it to my mother-in-law that no, like I'm not gonna change. And she said, no, I've seen in my life that people, when they get into trucking, they become different people and they actually become bad people. And like that is the sort of image we sort of deal with, right? And then at the same time, if you look at what truck drivers do, it is basically bringing necessity to people. Like doing the public service it is. Like, let's say if the truck stopped today, what do you have? You have nothing. Like, you have no building, no food, no nothing. Like, the hospitals closed down, right? Schools closed down. Like,
Yep.
if it's the trucks that bring you all this stuff, yet it is unappreciated.
It is, and when you think back to COVID, ugh, that time was that's a
It
scary
was
time.
nasty time,
It was a
yes.
nasty time. But when you think about it, when there was no toilet paper on the shelves,
Yeah.
right?
And
And
that's one item, Shelley. That's
yeah, that
one
that was
item.
one item, right? And then all of a sudden, you know, thank a trucker and heroes of the highway and the outpouring of, support and stuff. And then soon as the world opened up, truck drivers were right back in the garbage category, right? Um, People don't stop and think that, other than the air they breathe, everything comes by truck,
Correct.
right? Um,
And here's the thing. There is once again, I was talking to a truck driver, and he told me that his uncle, he got stuck in that Hurricane Katrina, and he never made it home. He was trucking. He was trucking down south someplace, and he got struck by, or got, they don't really know. They found his truck in a mud and a swamp and whatnot,
mhm.
but they never found him. Now, this person gave his life for this work, yet unappreciated.
It's true. And I can remember, like, I was down in Florida, Hurricane Wilma, and there we were, and coming off of an off ramp, and all of a sudden, we went from 18 wheels to 9, right? And that was very scary. And we got up so far, and then we pulled into a hotel, buried the truck in between two cement walls, got a room, and didn't move for 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but people don't seem to understand that. We are expected to keep things moving. And, they really need to stop and pay attention because after Hurricane Wilma, after Katrina, it was the trucking industry and it was the drivers bringing everything that they needed, medical supplies, food, water, by the truckload. It was drivers driving way beyond the scope of their hours with permission, um, to do everything possible to get food and water to keep people safe, right?
True.
And, you know, sure, do we have some very unskilled, unprofessional people that call themselves truck drivers? We do.
We do. Yes, I agree.
We do, right? But we also have so many more that are good professional drivers. And we keep all getting painted with the same brush.
Mhm. And the hate on the road and the hate on the social media. There's an accident and somebody made a video, posted on the social media, and then all of a sudden you read these comments and people are going, "Oh, these truck drivers, this and that, and blah and blah. They're the cause all the accidents," and like it's just so much negative image about trucking all across social media and even in real life. People hate you on the road. But then again, I mean, we have people losing our lives in the line of duty.
Yes, we do.
We do. We have people, I don't have the numbers right in front of me right now, but there's like many people that lose their life while doing this job, yet unappreciated and misunderstood.
That's just it. And the thing is like, a lot of times, like, people will see that, that truck that's in the ditch, right? And they make all kinds of assumptions about how that truck got in the ditch. And, being the daughter of an older generation of a truck driver, I was taught early on, even in my own like personal vehicle, is a truck driver has a split second to make that decision, whether to hit you or take the ditch, right? And we all know the odds of us surviving hitting the ditch is like 85%, I think,
Hmm.
um, without having some type of injury or possibly death. Right? And I can remember taking my first defensive driving course as a truck driver. And the instructor saying, okay, so you're driving down the road, this minivan cuts in front of you, there's somebody to your left. What do you do? Right. And I said to him, well, are there kids in that minivan? And he goes, well, does that make a difference? I said, to me, it does. I said, because if there's kids in there, I'll take the ditch.
Mm-hmm.
If it's just you putting your makeup on or shaving or having your coffee, I'm not going to die for you. I've got a family at home.
Mm-hmm.
I'll hit you.
Mm-hmm. True.
Right.
Actually, I was talking to one of the truck drivers, and he said one day I'm driving. He's a farmer here in the outskirts of Guelph. He said to me, he said, I'm driving the one time and I see a minivan, and I could see in the minivan, and he said I saw three kids and a mom and a dad just having fun in the minivan. And he said look at them and I said, like, my bad decisions can do a lot of bad things to them. So he said I processed that so deeply ever since my driving has changed. He said my driving has changed because every time I'm in a situation, I think of that minivan and the view of kids having fun with their parents in the minivan on the road. Fun means they're probably just, like pointing at things and whatnot, right? He
Yep.
said, I think of a family that my bad decisions can do a lot of things. And, like I think that was something heavy the way he said it, right, to me.
Yes, and that makes all the difference, right? And I think, we need to focus more on, and it's not just professional drivers, okay? This is anybody out on the road. Like safety has to be your number one priority. And, when you cut in front of the truck in a car, you're asking for it, right? Like you're putting your life at risk. Trucks don't stop on a dime.
You don't know.
No, right? And so the driver may have seen you in that lane, but sometimes, the view of your car can get cut off as you're cutting into the lane in front of the truck, especially the long nose hoods that are still
Hmm.
out there, right? And don't be in the left hand lane when you know your off ramp is coming up and they shoot across 4 or 5 lanes of traffic, right? That's an accident waiting to happen, right? And the brake checking.
Yeah.
And you're seeing more and more of that as drivers are getting fed up and they're starting to share more and more of their dash cam footage of just every day traveling down the road and the amount of cars that brake check them.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm not saying every truck driver is out there is innocent because I've seen some bad ones myself, right? So it's just like everybody needs to pay more attention because leave earlier. Leave earlier if you have to. Like, don't put your life and the life of others at jeopardy.
Shelly, is it so? If I were to ask you, in your opinion, whose responsibility is this to educate non-professional drivers? We do agree there's not enough education, right?
Yeah, there's not enough education. And, you
Whose
know,
job is this?
I think we need to start in the schools, right? So if we start teaching a part of it um, to kids, would be grade 9 or 10, maybe that 15, 16 mark, it ought to be a part of their driving course, if they're going through a driving school to get their G license. But many don't do that. Like there's a lot of people that don't take that opportunity for various reasons. Sometimes it's just financial. So if we start teaching a part of that in the high schools before these kids are getting ready to go get their licenses, right? I mean, they ought to know about safety around not just commercial vehicles, but school buses, how to share the road safely with motorcycles, right? You know, the importance of slowing down and moving over for emergency vehicles, and that includes tow operators, right? So if we do some part of it in high school and it's part of a mandatory curriculum, right? I think it'll make a big difference. I can tell you, like, I went into a school, I took a truck and a trailer in, and when those students, and not just the students, but the teachers, got inside the truck and we set it up and they couldn't believe where they could and could not see a car coming up alongside of that truck,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sometimes we can't always, we can talk about it, we can try to do little graphics, but when people actually get that visualization and see it for themselves, it'll give them that oh moment, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
aha, I didn't realize that, right? And maybe as we start this and get more involved doing that, it'll make a difference.
Correct. Kelly, I want to take some time talk about Chris, if you allow me. So tell us who's Chris.
Chris was my husband. He was my best friend, he was my soulmate, and he was my driving partner, and he was the very last driver that I ever trained.
And why do you say he was?
Because in 2019 he passed away um, due to a fatality accident at work.
So it's actually your husband who's given ultimate sacrifice for trucking. That's how I look at it.
It was, it was an accident. Um, it was preventable. It was a learning curve for many people within our industry after it happened. Um, and hopefully that it created some sense of awareness for others.
So I want you to talk to the people who think truckers are just bad people. Tell them that we, as truck drivers, play with our life every single day, every single moment on the road. Bring those essentials to the people.
Well, I think that's an important thing that people don't realize. Like every day, the slightest thing can go wrong in a truck driver's life, right? In their job, anything can go wrong. Anything from blowing a steer tire to an airline breaking on them to an accident to being in their own yard spotting a trailer and getting crushed into a building, right? Accidents happen and they happen in all walks of life. It's not just trucking. Um, but when you look at the averages, like the top 10 deadliest professions, truck driving's up there in that number. And it's also higher than a police officer. So you really have to think, okay, so how do we change that? How do we get that stat down from there? And it's all to me, it's more being more safety oriented, safety focused, doing what you need to do. I've had people say to me, "Oh, you're a little anal when it comes to safety." Well, I'm anal about safety because I value my life and I value the life of other people around me. And to me, if you don't have that mentality, trucking's not for you.
Kelly, how do you want Chris to be remembered?
Oh, Chris was a free spirit, and he was well loved by a lot in the industry. He was a very big part of helping me get this organization going. Um, he was big on safety, um, and he was always helping others. He would never say no. He did not care who you were. Um, he didn't care the color of your skin, your race, your religion. It didn't matter. If you were out on the road and you needed help, he did it. He helped so many, slide their bogies, adjust weights, get their fifth wheels unlocked. It didn't matter to him.
So Shelly, the young people, if you ask them about trucking, they don't know much. We talked about this. Yet, how do you encourage people to get into trucking? Like, if it is a dangerous job, it is not appreciated, and it does have a negative image in the public's eye. So, how do we encourage people to get into trucking? Because this leads to another problem that I will get talk about this shortly.
Well, I think the biggest thing is like what I do is, and we do a lot of career fairs. I can tell you at one event alone, I had 2,500 students in my truck, right? Um, But, when you say to them, "What do you know about trucking?" Most of them will tell you, wheel offs, see you guys in the ditch, rollovers, you're killing people. And you have to stop them and go, okay, like, what do you know other than those things
Negative
surrounding
things.
accidents? What do you know? And most of them know nothing, right? So we have, when we're doing these events, besides our TV screen that goes, we have photo albums. So we're showing drivers in different scenarios and different roles involved in community events, from doing parades to charity events. And we try to show more of that positive stuff of the industry. And then we've got other ones that's like photos of the Rocky Mountains and the Grand Canyon and, West Virginia and Kentucky. And they're amazed at what they're seeing,
Mhm.
right? And so it's just like there is positive in what we do.
Did your kids get into trucking?
One of my boys was, but I mean, his father and I are divorced, and his dad was an owner operator. So, I mean, my boys could back up a tractor trailer at 12, hook and drop into a gooseneck, do the grease and oiling. I mean,
They had the trucking.
yeah, they had the trucking bug, and
Mhm.
I can remember being at a scenario. There was a yard, and my boss was there at the time, and it was a very tight dock, especially with the highway unit, just because of where the fence and stuff lined up with it. And my kid said to him, there was a driver there. My kid said to that driver, he goes, "Do you need help?" Right? And the driver just kind of looked at him. And so the boss was like, "Well, kid, you think you can do it? Go nuts," right? First shot, kid got it. Right. And
Really?
they just
Wow.
looked, right? And
Mhm.
it's just like, he grew up with it,
Mhm.
right? So, it makes a difference, right? And, I mean, his dad had a gooseneck, so that's even a more,
Mhm.
different kind of
It
approach, and
is.
difficult to get under and under and
Mhm.
maneuver, right? So, yeah, it gets in your blood.
The reason I asked this question, Shelley, is I do know, and this is, I don't think there's any studies done on this, but lots of truck drivers that are in trucking, they don't want their kids to get into trucking themselves.
No.
You do you agree to this?
Yes.
And you know the reasons. I know the reason. You know what? Talk about the reasons. Why don't you want your kids to get into trucking when you truck yourself?
The reason is because it's so it's not respected. There's no respect, right? And that respect goes right from, employers right down to the general public. Our roads are getting more and more unsafe, right? I mean, when you look about, um, Highway 11 and 17, okay,
And
the
just for the average person, this is the one that goes up north.
yeah, Northern Ontario,
Yep.
and then you look at the 401 corridor, especially from Toronto to Montreal, right? And the accidents are increasing. We seem to be having less and less proper road maintenance in the winter months. When I first started driving, it used to be about Northern Ontario specifically. Was in the summer months we have tourists and construction. And the winter months we just have plain bad roads. And now we're seeing more and more wrecks. Um, we're seeing road closures happening, 36, 37 hours. And what I think a lot of the general public doesn't understand is, when you're on that 1117 up in Northern Ontario and it's a road closure for the winter, there is no place for me to go. I am stuck in a truck on a road,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's not enough truck parking. There's not enough rest areas. There's not enough shoulders that we can pull off to, right? 37 hours is a long time to be stuck on that roadway. And sure, making sure your truck's got fuel in it. All of us do that run that corridor. We all carry food in our trucks because of lack of truck stops. So we all have food and water. But there's basic human things like a washroom. I mean, they're not in the truck,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, um, and they'll get cold. Even though the truck is running, depending on how much the temperature's dipping, we're trying to keep the trucks idled up to keep the engine warm, to create heat in the truck. The cold breeze will be
Mm-hmm.
blowing in and underneath the truck, and there's so many things that people don't think about, right? And then you've got whiteout conditions, and as we've seen. the other day just along the 400 and the multi-vehicle collisions,
Yeah, I
right?
saw that. Yeah.
That's from people following too close. You look in Michigan, like over 100 vehicles,
Correct. Yeah.
right? So people are not paying attention. So it's putting our lives more and more at risk every
Is that
day.
why kids are not letting their kids go into trucking?
Yep, that's a big thing. Like when I talk to a lot of my friends that are out here that are, still driving, um, they really don't want their kids to get into it. They're pushing them for higher education, um, something that's more safe.
But you know what that leads to? Because we are a nation of immigrants. We have a lot of newcomers coming into the country every year, and that leads to newcomers getting into trucking. And then, there's a huge criticism about what the process should be. And then you see a lot of immigrant truck drivers, or more so newcomers that literally just moved to the country and they're already driving, and their sense of infrastructure, I don't say they're less smart or anything. Some people are, majority of the, like we all have our own view of the world, but it's just the lack of experience in this infrastructure and weather, right? That's what it leads to, that there's a vacuum. Who's going to drive these trucks?
That's an issue. Um, Immigrants and newcomers, regardless of what country they're coming from, asylum seekers that we have in this country, um, that are getting pushed right into the trucking industry, because it's promoted to them as a easy career and that they'll make good money at. Um, but unfortunately, we are not doing anything to protect those people.
Hmm.
And people may say, oh, well, they have a lot of protections. Uh, They don't, for as much as people think they do. And I think, you know, the truck training schools are not good enough. Excuse me. And that they end up going to, because it all boils down to the bottom line, the financially. And then we have the fact that, our knowledge tests are available in 27 different languages. We have two official languages in this country, English and French. If you can't fluently read and write those languages enough to understand roadsides, basic communication, then you shouldn't be behind the wheel of any vehicle,
I agree.
right? Excuse me. And I think that's a problem. And the U.S., for as much as people are disgusted with what's going on and what Trump's doing, there isn't a truck driver that I know of that won't tell you that they're so happy for that English proficiency that's happening down in the U.S.
Let me stop you here for a second. You know what happened before is we only relied on road signs, and road signs are designed for any person to sort of understand, even without having the language. That's what the whole purpose of road sign is, right? Now we have electronic messages on the roads. For example, they've put these solar powered electric boards on the highway that tell you that whether the highway is, you're approaching a closure up there,
Yep.
stuff like that, because like, so you're more alert that you're gonna, the highway is closed in so many kilometers, right? So if you can't read that, like, there's a serious problem, right?
Well, the thing is, people go on about like the road signs that we have, and there's basic standard ones, um, in Ontario. But I challenge anybody out there, do the research because we have.
Hmm.
There is only one universal road sign in the whole world. One.
Stop sign.
That's it. Right? The language may be different, but it's the only one that's universal. And
Octagon.
right? And
Red.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think to myself, and for people that go, well, it's so easy to do. Okay, well, go into Quebec, go anywhere in the province of Quebec and tell me if you can understand those construction signs.
Yeah.
Because I have friends that are from Quebec that live there. It's their first language, and they'll tell you those signs confuse them,
Hmm.
right? So,
I'm the victim too, by the way.
right? So, and I don't think it's being racist or saying or being discriminatory when we say that people need to have those basic skills in this country to operate a vehicle. Uh,
Commercial vehicle. for the
Commercial
most
bill.
part.
Yeah, for
But
the
who's
most part.
responsible then? Who's responsible? It can't just be the government.
Well, no, I think, we need to look at it. So when, like, and I've brought this up with EDSC is
And what is EDSC?
Employment Development Standard. I'm gonna mess it all up.
It's okay. I
But
understand. Yeah. Okay.
and the fact that, there's not enough places that teach English as a second language for newcomers that come into our country, right? That is the basics. English is the hardest language to learn, and I get that. I was recently at a meeting and a gentleman goes, "Well, there's apps today."
Apps.
Apps. Yep,
Mhm.
there's apps on the phone. And I go, "That app does not read a road sign." Right? And if they've got to use an app to take a picture while they're driving, which is distractive driving, to communicate it to them in their language, we have a problem, right? I have talked to many, many tow operators right across this country that will tell you there are so many times that they're on an accident scene or towing a vehicle from the side of the road and they cannot communicate with that driver. That driver does not understand what they're saying.
And other than language, Shelley, the other problem is, and I understand this because I do come from an immigrant background too myself, is the culture. If culture is a very strong thing, we sometimes undermine it. Culture, if you move from one place to the other, the cultural things that you brought with you, they take very, very long time to change. So in
Yes.
Canada, we do have safety culture. Some places, this culture does not exist. And it does not exist for various reasons. It's, it may work in that climate.
Yes.
They don't have snow, ice, or any of that stuff. They don't 365 days a year, they have dry roads. They may have rain a few times, but still, and then, their culture, safety culture is different than here. And then you come here, you got to be very vigilant, especially in the wintertime and even in the summer times because winds can get really, really high.
Yes. And I think that's an issue too, right? When you talk about that is, the infrastructure from where they came from,
Hmm.
right? And the lack of safety culture. So if we have some kind of period, and I mean, and those are ongoing things, and that having a basis of how long you have to have a license for, um, when you come into this country, right? Um, I don't think it's unreasonable or unfair to say that, they should have at least a minimum 2 years of verifiable winter driving experience before they can upgrade to commercial vehicle, right? Um, we used to have skid schools back in the day. I put my husband through the one that was down in Michigan at the time in the big truck. He learned a lot from that, right? It's teaching those practices, and I have some friends that are from the South Asian community, and they say that it was a big learning curve for some in their family, and he goes, and our culture is we're tight with money. We don't want to spend it,
Hmm.
right? We always want to bargain, we want to
Hmm.
negotiate, we want the
Hmm.
bare bottom pricing. And he goes, but so they have to learn that here, they can't do that when it comes to their truck training, right? And and it's not just a new immigrant problem. I see it all the time and I hear from people all the time. Well, I'm going to go to this truck training school over here because they're $3,000 less than this one over here. You get what you pay for.
Absolutely.
Okay?
There's,
Let me just say that. You get what you pay for, right?
absolutely. This is.
And if you are serious about getting a job in this industry, go talk to a couple carriers. Don't talk to the drivers. Go talk to the carriers. Go in, make an appointment, call them up, just pop in and find out what truck training schools do they hire from, right? What are their requirements? What are they looking for, right? Do the research. This just isn't a case of trusting what's on Google reviews, right? I hear from so many people all the time. We get messages and emails. I've got my license, but I can't get a job. It's been 6 months now. It's been 3 months now. I can't get a job. And I'll go to them, oh, where did you go to school? Soon as they tell me where they went to school, I know exactly what their problem is, right? You're not going to get a job, right? If you cut corners, you're cutting corners on safety and you're cutting corners on your life.
Shelly, so school is one problem. I agree on this. And the other problem is, I believe, the companies.
Yes.
Companies is a problem too. The companies that hire them and all that stuff, right?
Yeah. Like we have a lot of good companies out there, but we also have a lot of bad ones.
Yeah. Shelly, one last question I have for you, and then we're going to wrap up. But have you faced sexism in trucking? I know there's racism in trucking for sure, but is there sexism in trucking?
I have only ever had one experience with it. I'm not going to say that's not out there. And I think it is, I hear more about it from American female drivers than I do Canadian drivers.
That's it. So that puts it together. That Canadians are much more polite and more open-minded people. Shelly, I
Yeah.
want to thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for your time, and thank you for watching. We'll catch you guys next Sunday.